Hello, friends. Welcome to my welcome back to my ad hoc rantings program on the internet. Today's I'm going to author a book called Ad Hoc Rantings, sprawling points, far-flung points, relevant points, but great points nonetheless. So today, I've been reading in the media or news outlets yesterday that Saudis are going to start taking yuan instead of dollar for oil shipments. I have actually produced a recording talking about sunsetting the United States by Israel, really, ever since the decapitation of the United States government by Israel by killing JFK and RFK. Uh, and the country has been sunsetted, basically. If you look at it, you will have, if you look at the history of the transition of the United States from then until now, and the gutting of the United States, and sending that to China, sending the essence and the elements and the fundamentals and everything to China and Russia and Iran, you will see what I'm talking about. Those of you who witnessed the United States growth and halt of growth after, after the takeover of Nixon, but very much lately, you will see what I'm talking about. There is no dispute this history and what's happening in the US. But now I want to bring up, and what's happening in the Middle East is very relevant. In fact, it's very relevant due to the shift in accepting yuan for oil, as well as now the teaching of Chinese language in schools in Saudi. So here's the analysis, and here's my historic evidence that I know of myself. So I have mentioned to you before that Israel has tripod Iran and Russia and China, but yet there are other tentacles out there, such as the Gulf countries, such as the Syrian regime, which Israel ordered Iran and Russia and the Syrian regime itself, otherwise, to murder something like maybe 10, 20%, 20% of the Syrian population, the majority, which are Sunnis, something similar to, say, the United States being majority Christian Protestant, right? Or something of the sort, and then the eviction of the rest of them, and the minority which really belongs to Israel, and that's the Alawite regime, right? Not all the Alawites, the lower ranks are basically dogs, like they're trained to kill and eat and maim and stuff like that. So the United States being gutted and being torn down for one simple reason is because it grew up as a democracy. It developed itself as a democracy, as a independent research, blah blah. They inherited science, of course, just like other Europeans from the Arabs, with some development later. However, on its own, it had the elements, and it had the will, and it had the sense of freedom and liberty in order for people really to thrive and begin to do goodness for themselves and eventually the world, for that matter. I'm not saying United States is perfect. No, by no means. They have some real troublesome past in some wars and certain places and so on and so forth. Although I want to tell you that it's far better than the Soviet Union for communism and Mongolism, and it is far better. Now, it did actually take a turn to the worst and began to look like communism on the watch of Trump. when Trump was in office, he, and if you look before him, like Nixon, when he started bombing civilians in Vietnam and so on, and Truman, which actually used nuclear weapons in Japan and bombed cities and so on. And then you get Trump killing hundreds of thousands in Mosul and so on and so forth. Of course, making the false accusation that there was ISIS there. ISIS is basically an Israeli organization helping against the Sunnis, which are locals. They really never go anywhere. That said, I remember in the year 2004, or around it, I went on a project, a prospective project, not exactly a guaranteed project, to Saudi. The project was called, I don't know how I really got that project or how I was referred to it or whatever it was. The Saudi telecommunication company, or STC, had issues with their data network. Data network, every telecom, carrier or whoever it is, they have two sides to their main infrastructure. One is telecommunications, and that is your cell tower and the base station and many switches and many other elements or components that basically communicates to your phone and then relay your telephone, transform that, which is used to be like transform that into digital communication, but now it's the phone itself that does that and does error correction, and there's a whole host of things. When you lift up your phone, and talk to somebody and they're so clear, there's so much going on in the background. Engineers have made that happen after so long research and testing and development, and R&D, research and development, is still in the works. But then before that digital communications happen, those components must communicate with data network. Why? For many reasons. One, they want to make sure when you connect to a cell tower, they want to make sure that you're authorized to connect to a cell tower, that you have been paying your bill, you have authorized your line is not disconnected. There are many considerations. Or when you connect and let in, like they say, into the infrastructure, let into the house, or administered or admitted into admission into the network to use it and communicate with somebody else, whether it's data or whether it's voice, right? Then everything about your call and communications is recorded, and that happens when the digital infrastructure communicates with the back end of the data infrastructures, and these are basically servers, mainly Unix and databases and so on and so forth, and all kind of things happen there. That's how, for example, when the police go to check on somebody's telephone record, they get like an injunction from a judge to get the record of somebody. It's from those systems which recorded the details of your calls. Sometimes the whole thing is recorded, even the voice, even the conversation, even and there are many things happen there. If they flag a certain word that has to do, so for example, with terrorism, many things happen immediately. Your call is monitored and forwarded to the authorities, and a lot of things happen on the data infrastructure. But now that data infrastructure, I remember back then, was in disrepair, and one day they were out. That data infrastructure was out for 3 days. Not that the digital side didn't work, but apparently they were not billing or recording or anything else, and they had called the TAC, which is Technical Assistance Center from Cisco, and they sent a couple of engineers, and then they patched things up until they got things back to work again. That data network, so there are switches made by Cisco, for example, and and I was brought there in order to not by the STC itself, but by a third-party company, local contractor, who turned out to be Syrian, a Saudi from Syrian origin. He's a Syrian, really, and his father apparently has become a Saudi citizen, and so on. And he wanted to produce a proposal for the STC as to correct things, right? Rebuild the back end, and I was very confident and subject matter expert in networking. So I accepted to write up the proposal, and the proposal I wrote like within 2-3 weeks. Oh, I put my heart into it. I produced like a document with very fine details, about 250 pages, perhaps I recall, from rebuilding the network into monitoring. And I proposed, I remember, HP OpenView and so on, and did some diagrams and. But when I was there, I went there, and the owner of the company. Now, just to go back track, that when I gave him the proposal, I went and visited home in Syria, and then I came back here to the US. And then the owner of the company called me, and he said that the proposal that I put together single-handedly was shortlisted among 4. So 4 contractors submitted a proposal, number of contractors, and there were 4 selected. My proposal was one of them. He wanted to renege because I was supposed to be a partner in the project. He said, no, we'll talk about salary and so on. But I don't know what happened. I really never got talked to him afterwards or anything else. So when I was there in Saudi, and when I was there in Saudi, I figured out right there and then that he and his office workers, who were some Syrians and some from Pakistan and so on, they were regime people. Some were Alawites, right? Alawitdes, right? Or TES. But then I was like, I was in a corner, like I don't work with those people for a number of reasons, personal reasons. But at the same time, I wanted the business, like I thought, this is for the STC and so on. And then I can clearly see their loyalty to the regime of Syria, even though they're supposedly Saudis, right? Nonetheless, even the name, even though they're Syrians and loyal to the regime, one name sounded Jewish, right? Like I said, I don't care. Nonetheless, he made a statement. At one point, we were at lunch, and then he made a statement saying that they were told, and he being part of some, whatever, in Saudi or Syria or whatever it is, he said, and I think he slipped, and that was in, 18 years ago. He said, and I quote, that we've been told now in technology, or what the business we do, purchase, consulting, or whatever it is, to head toward China. I remember that vividly. But regardless of my feelings toward the United States, I was vehemently a US citizen, and my skill set grew up here in technology. And I always preferred US-made equipment over anybody's else equipment. And then I mentioned that I want, in my proposal, in my designs and so on, I want US. Now he said, and I quote, that they're going to buy equipment, networking equipment from Huawei, which is the Chinese communication company, right? And I was, even though I didn't know they make the networking equipment and so on, I decided, I told them, I'm not really into equipment from China because of, quality, and the leading edge is really in the United States, and whatever China manufactures is really stolen from the United States. So I don't want secondhand stuff. He agreed. He says, look, this is not etched in stone. If you want US equipment, we can talk about that. So I said, yes, that's what I will list here. So I listed, I remember, namely at that point, at that time, used to have a switch router called GSR 12,000, right? As the main backbone communication, right? And then below it, different type of switches. Now, he was a partner with Huawei, that Chinese company. So lo and behold, he called, I was in the office, and there comes this Chinese man. It turns out that this Chinese man is a representative of the Huawei Chinese telecommunication company. He is the main representative in Saudi, marketing and so on. And then apparently he has heard about my opposition to their equipment. And I said this, I said, he said, he began like with, as if he was firm about their equipment. He said, he took off his glasses, and we were sitting like face to face in front of the desk of the owner of the or the manager of the company, that Syrian guy, right, with Jewish sounding name. And he says, you have a very weak idea of our equipment. And then I began to look at their equipment just before the meeting, and lo and behold, they use the same names, GSR 12,000. Not just that, they use one of their routing protocols, EIGRP, that's Cisco proprietary. They don't give it to anyone. And to me, it's how do they have it? It turns out later, I learned later that this was stolen. And there's nothing Cisco can do about that, really. They just built it, they had like their own, some Mossad from India and here, and they took it from within the company and forwarded that to China, in which case it was like just basically they compiled it and put it in the kernel of the switch, and guess what? Do what you want to do, right? So you see how your data is not just Snowden, it's, oh, there are a lot of rats around here. When you come from India, you're a Mossad. That's it. Basic and simple. And you find a job. I've seen people who are here from India. They're very smart people, But I've seen so many who don't know shit, and then yet they're called engineers and they get paid, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably more than I do. Not our subject here. The subject is this. And we went into an argument, I remember. I said, it's not like confidence and no confidence, but I know Cisco, blah, blah, that, blah, 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 blah. I started talking. It didn't last long, as a matter of fact, I remember. We disagreed, and he probably figured out I'm one of those worthless Muslims, and that if I was in China, you would put me in the camps, with the Uyghurs and so on. I don't know. I mean, but nonetheless, sad. I'm laughing, but sad. I'm vehemently for those people. Later on, I talked to the owner. I was there for 2-3 weeks, I think. I don't recall how long. I got like a vacation time here. If I recall correctly, I was working still for Fellows Manufacturing. And then it turned out, like it or not, they went into my proposal and changed all the Cisco equipment I put there for Chinese equipment. I think my proposal, I think I was brought there and for free. They just paid for the hotel, right? For free. I was there for free. And I think they used my documentation and my designs and so on for Huawei to land the project of overhauling the data side of STC. I believe so. I mean, I don't know what happened later, but that's what I believe has happened. Now, the case I'm going back to sunsetting the United States and the destruction of the United States. Those guys in there, in the Gulf, are Israelis. Those rulers in there. Make no mistake about that. Now, you may always hear about the hostilities between Iran and Saudis. Oh, man. You guys have no idea. One day, I remember not too long ago, a few years back, that a newspaper in Iran, Kayhan, or one newspaper, cursed the Saudis as a family and so on, and they were punished by the Ayatollah Khamenei. They shouldn't talk like that about the Saudi family. Bottom line is this, folks. The sunsetting and the destruction of the United States is systematic, has been going on for a long time now. And everybody is joined in. But lately, starting with the Bushes, right? The first Bush, 1991 war. He took the United States. Well, it was Vietnam and then afterwards and so on and so forth. Fact of the matter is this, Israel is hell-bent on destroying the United States. That's that. And you Americans, I just gave you an example. of those Saudis, the ones that you protect, the ones that you supply weapons for. I mean, just recently, right? Just recently, they talked about taking the yuan instead of a dollar for oil. Not just that. Even after that, the United States still yet sent Patriot missiles to Saudi, and as if nothing happened. It's like the two brothers bickering about some food or something. But that is a major hit when Saudis, which is the largest oil producer, right, now ditches the dollar, right, and then go for the yuan. They're trying to strengthen the yuan. They're trying to support China. They're trying to lift China up, and not just that. Now they're teaching Chinese in their schools. As to why, I don't understand. But their direction toward China is very simple, because they are loyal to Israel, and China and Iran and Russia are main tripod of Israel. They're the upper blocks of that pyramid. Or they remain like closer to the head of the octopus that is running amok and destroying the world. And that's that, folks. That's that. Know who your enemy is, and know that that's not going to change. And now Americans should not underestimate the size of the problem of that Pustalinin, the bloodsucker weasel that I mentioned in my novel, right? The one I'm gonna write. As individuals, as US citizens, now is the time for you to go and fight against them in Ukraine, or supply them with weapons and so on and so forth. You're probably looking for a new world. Oh, that new world, folks. You don't want to see it, believe me. Now you won't be alive to see it come to full fruition. It won't. I assure you it won't. But if hypothetically it does, you don't want your children to live in that world, period. That's what I saw. That's my evidence. And that was 18 years ago. Sunsetting the United States, and every tripod, every hair, every tentacle of Israel is assisting in that. And the ramification and consequences of that is when the United States is totally, completely demolished or turned into some shabby country like the Middle East or something of the sort. And if you look at the history ever since JFK, it began to take downward turn, right? But lately, during the last 4 or 5, it's accelerated now. It's in a free fall, as a matter of fact. Trillions of dollars being stolen every day and given to investors around the world, and all the investors are basically Israelis. It's that simple. What happened in Ukraine, folks, is something big. You have no idea. It took like a divine intervention to do it. And you couldn't sit back and relax and kick back and relax, or just turn your face the other way, or pretend not to see, or play dumb or so. Things are going to hit you if you don't. So that's what it is, folks. That's what it is. It is definitely that. It is definitely that. Now it is very clear to you what I said before, even before February 24th. I told you, Putin is not going to stop in Ukraine. This is a comprehensive operation. On a historic level, this was nothing short of a new communist revolution, or a Chinese communist revolution, or George Washington in the United States. This was nothing short of that. They were going to be all over Europe 1 week at a time, believe me. If things worked out for Pustalinin in Ukraine, like they said, in 1 week, and they will have taken the Baltics and Finland, and it began to go into Eastern Europe 1 week at a time, believe me. But you got lucky, and I hope you realize you don't get lucky every day. Case and point are very simple, folks. Americans, don't be taken by this like weasel, bloodsucker weasel dressed up as a cat and committing all kind of terrorism and meowing. Terror is the product of those sickly bunch that Israel utilizes as Muslim organizations or revolutions such as Iran, such as Hezbollah, such as the Syrian regime, such as ISIS, such as Qaeda, and so on. Believe me, when the United States military went and killed hundreds of thousands in Mosul, well, they provided the hardware for Shiites to do so, right? While they watched, and they participated as well. What, hundreds of thousands? I know for certain there was not something called ISIS in Mosul, not from the beginning until the end, not one. And if they were there, those Sunnis would have slayed them right there and then. Have a nice day, my friend. And remember, things are very serious, folks. And Post-Stalinian is getting a lot of help, financial ones, from United States, from China, from possibly Japan and Germany and here and there. Look at NATO. They come out and brag about supporting Ukraine, but they're doing nothing. Why is that? When they now have ample evidence that the post-Stalinians are up to no good against their country. It's very obvious. Why are they waiting? It's mind-boggling. But not for me. I know what the story is. This is not the first time an evil wave tries to take over the world and recedes. Just going to recede this time around. But not before they cause a lot of harm and killing and maiming and destruction and genocide and so on. It was always their habit. Here's a secret for you. I have been looking carefully into the events of history, starting for a long time. Right now, I have ample evidence, and I'm drawing a conclusion, or coming very close to I'm 99% sure, but coming to 100% sure of this conclusion. There's one creed and one type that is responsible for all the wars that have been happening and all the killing and all the genocide. But that's another subject, my friends. I hope you get up and shake the dust off yourself and start looking out for your future and that of your children, and go stop that menace in the East. They speak of world war. Oh, goodness. Even if it was, trust me, Putin's are nothing. Ask yourself that question. If with few anti-tank missiles and anti-aircraft, shoulder-carried anti-aircraft missile, that what they call themselves bears, basically came to a halt. What do you think if the whole entire military of the United States bears down on that country? Believe me, just like they went from Kuwait to Baghdad in what, 2-3 weeks, they will go from Ukraine to Moscow in less than 3 weeks. Much faster so. Why? Because the Russian people don't want this communism anymore. Have a nice day, my friends.